Me being gay is not going to stop me from doing the job correctly. The kind of leader I want to be is the kind of leader that I needed when I was younger. The only thing that you really have to prove is that you can do the job at the end of the day.
In this video, we are graced by an LGBTQ leader, a person who have reached his status now as a leader and associate director in a reputable organization through his effort to prove his competence and prove his worth, not only for his customers, but also for the people that he leads. I'd like you to meet our friend, our LGBTQ pride, Sir Jean Agor. Let's talk about your kind of leader. Given different turning points in our life, what would you consider as your defining moment?
I think from my experience, during my first job, I had a really good leader. She didn't even want to be called our boss. Her first rule to us was, call me by my first name and don't call me ma'am or whatnot. So when I had my first job, my first leader, it was a very genuine kind of mentorship. And when I went to my second job, it was like completely different. So during that particular time in my life, that's when I kind of realized, okay, like the kind of leader I want to be is the kind of leader that I needed when I was younger. And that kind of leader is the one who can level with the people that he or she is actually leading and not seem like too far off or not seem like too distant to actually have a conversation with, or you'd be scared to actually approach a question with.
Now, Jean, you are unique. You are unique in your own way and courageous as well. Given your honesty to yourself and to others, being an LGBTQ, talk to me about that uniqueness of being part of the LGBTQ community.
From an advertising industry,
Okay.
I think as a gay person, it wasn't too much of a big deal. The environment is very much welcoming. So I guess from my perspective in the industry that I belong in currently, it wasn't much of a challenge. It wasn't much of a deterrent to what I do on a day-to-day basis. But from a role perspective, I think that's where it kind of becomes a bit different from a leadership perspective, from what I do on a day-to-day basis. As a leader, I think the first thing that you need to develop with your team is they have to have that genuine respect for you. And sometimes that respect comes in the way of them believing you because of your credentials, you walking the talk, you being a good role model for them. But sometimes there are certain people, unfortunately, who see that your sexuality is something that might discourage them from actually giving that respect. I did kind of feel that hesitance at first. Pero I think how I got around that is I also had to prove to them na parang me being gay is not going to stop me from doing the job correctly and by leading the team properly.
In your journey as LGBTQ, you're a talent, you're a leader. Were there mindsets that you needed to break within you? No, were there mindsets and were there perceptions of your environment that you needed to disprove as an LGBTQ?
I think personally, yes. Back then, when people think about, okay, someone who's gay, automatic ang placement niyan would be at communication arts, for example. You would be working in beauty. All of these tropes, basically, that people have come up with. And I think back then, madaming stereotypes. You weren't allowed to be in the big meetings. The reckoning point is when you also have people of leadership who also recognize that, that shouldn't be a showstopper.
So let's say you have an opportunity to talk to your 20-year-old self. What would you tell him?
I'll tell him that, it gets better. It doesn't get easier, definitely, but it gets better. What becomes more comforting to know is that the way that you deal with the difficulties, you become better at it as well.
Speaking of that, what would you, as a leader, provide to fellow LGBTQs, no, to the people in that angle, from a leadership standpoint? What would be your message?
I think never suppress it. Because a lot of people think, and I also like used to think that way, na parang just because I'm gay, I have to like put up this front in work. I have to be strict so people like would respect me, etc., etc. There is a time for that, yes. But if that is not who you are, then you can't be that all the time. The only thing that you really have to prove is that you can do the job at the end of the day. And regardless of what other people would say, you don't have to change how you approach things. You don't have to change how you put yourself out there. At the end of the day, it's really about staying true to yourself. And when people see that, when people genuinely see that's who you are, everything else falls into place. Parang it's what's more difficult is you try to hide your true self,
Yeah.
and people see right through that as well. And when they see that you're faking it and they see that you're not being true to yourself, how can they be true to you as well? How can they respect you as a person as well?